Hey, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Anis and Ghazala. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this first episode of Tea Time with IPID-Asia Women Forum. My name is Esmeralda, and for the next 45 minutes or an hour, we are going to talk about the different aspects related to women in the field of ICT4D, or Information Communication Technology for Development. I think Ani's just being kicked out. It's okay. She will be joining us very soon. Like in this first episode, we have a very exciting topic. The topic is doing a postgraduate research in ICTD in a foreign land. So with me today, I already have Ghazala, who is postdoctoral fellow at the University College Technology Sarawak in Malaysia. And Anis, who will be rejoining us very soon, is a PhD student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So I'm just seeing Anis in the waiting room, so I'm going to admit her back. Just bear with me, everyone. She'll be rejoining. Yes, Anis is here. Anis, can you hear us? Oh, she's just connecting to the audio. Wonderful. Anis, can you hear me clearly?
Yep, yes, I can.
Yeah, so like I was just saying in the introduction, so Anis is a PhD student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Ghazala is currently based in Malaysia, and Anis is based in Indonesia. Yeah, Anis, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. So I hope Ghazala and Anis, you are doing well. And I know both of you pretty well, but then the audiences, I'm sure they would like to know a little bit about you. So I will start with Ghazala. Ghazala, can you introduce a little bit about yourself, particularly what research you're doing in the field of ICT4D?
Hello, my name is Ghazala, as Melissa already introduced me. I started my PhD in the rural informatics area at the Institute of Social Informatics Technological Innovation, UNIMAS, University of Malaysia, Sarawak. And it was about like rural informatics, like telecenter role in the socio-economic development of indigenous community. So after thorough review of the literature, we found that obviously when I submitted my proposal, the gap was already identified. But then with the passage of time, we realized that there's another big problem than the one we were pursuing. So we submerged it, and it was about the intangible impact of telecenter like ICT4D on the indigenous community called Barrio, which is meaning the telecenter actually was established for more than 20 years. So in order to evaluate the intangible impact of any ICT-led community intervention, could be seen with the passage of time, because the immediate impact can be easily measured, can be easily identified. So anyhow, my research area started as a rural informatics, but in that I studied, specialized in the ICT4D, in which I evaluated the impact of telecenter, and which was on the indirect. By indirect impact, indirect, that was associated to the non-users as well, and in terms of intangible. So currently I am working as a postdoc research fellow at the University College Technology Sarawak, and called UCTS. Actually, I'm more good at the short terms UCTS and UNIMAS, but when it comes to long name, then it becomes kind of a bit difficult. So my research was about the rural informatics, indigenous communities, trying to find out what has been done in that area, and particularly what was the community perspective towards the telecenter role in their community development, what benefit was perceived from the community point of view, actually, rather than me going directly asking question about what benefit you have obtained. But for me, was more taking like approach to ask community in their own word in the form of stories, like information rich cases, to tell about their experience with the telecenter, the benefit they perceived, the benefit they received directly from their other community fellows, relatives, friends, community members. At the same time, the benefit they passed on to other people in their own family, in their surrounding people. So that was a kind of a really rich case study that I conducted. And I was lucky enough that it really like, I won't say like a smooth well actually, but in terms of there's so many, bumps and jumps when you go through field work and then again go through all like, compiling the research study. But that was all about like evaluating the impact.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, and we're going to get back on that one. I'm very interested in the background about and your experiences working with indigenous community, right? But then before that, I would like to go to Anis. Anis, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing currently, what research you're doing? Yeah. Sorry, Anis, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Two connection methods. So one is Wi-Fi and the other one is my mobile phone, just in case I get disconnected again.
Sure.
Let's see.
I'm also using my mobile phone. The internet really fluctuates when it comes to my laptop actually.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, Ghazala, it always fluctuates when you are on a meeting. I don't know why. They just know about this stuff.
Yeah.
True. You're not having any meetings. You're not, seeing people. You're not teaching. It's always working well.
No, because
and then there would like some bugs would pop out.
no, the technology, and it's the technology sense your fear, so you should not show it to them.
I think so too. When you're having meetings, when you're having interviews, all these things, there's always all of these problems. That never happens whenever you're just like writing or like watching YouTube. YouTube is always seamless. Facebook is always seamless. All kinds of distraction are always seamless. The stuff that you really have to do, never seamless. I don't know why. I think we need to do a research on this, because I think there's something, there's some valid theory on this, I think. Sorry. It's okay. So what did I miss?
That will be Ani's next project. Yeah, I was just like asking you if you can introduce a little bit about yourself, like for example, where you're from, and then what you're currently doing in terms of ICT4D research.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Anis. I'm studying at the University of Hawaii at Manoa right now, in the Communication and Information Sciences. So when I first started applying for this work, I was really interested in the field of ICT4D. As long as it can be everything, it can be anything. It can be like women empowerment, it can be tourism, etc. I was really, I really like the idea of how like the technology can, help like developing countries to leapfrog, to catch up with the rest of the world. So I thought that was like a promising, idea. So when I first applied to this program, Communication and Information Sciences, I was really interested in the field of tourism. So I love the fact. So here in Indonesia, the cash cow for tourism is actually not overseas tourists. It's actually what do you call it? Domestic tourists. This is how people are making the money. So usually the cash cows are usually domestic tourists. And how is that possible? Whenever something is posted on the media, people get interested. It's like, wow, something went viral, you know, like, hey, did you know that there's this like really great view in this area or something? So people would like be, what do you call it, talking about it in their blogs. They would be having like vlogs, you name it. And then after that, people would be flocking that particular area. So I was really interested in user-generated content for tourism, and I applied that idea for my in my statement to University of Hawaii, and I get accepted. But you know how like the system in the United States is like you have about like 2 years or more of studying, so you're still taking classes, right? So in the beginning, like all my professors was telling me, it's like, Anis, I mean, just take the classes first, and like don't worry about what you're going to pursue, because sometimes things will change along the way, because you will be like getting all what do you call it, all types of information that may like, you know, may lead you to pursue that passion of yours, or may lead you to pursue other types of research. And like they were right. So when I went there, like, you know, I went to Hawaii because it's also part, you know, a tourism activity area. So I was thinking like, okay, great. If I'm going to follow up on a user-generated content and ICT4D, you know, University of Hawaii at Manoa would be like the perfect place. But when I went there after studying, you know, quite for some time, I took social informatics classes. I took what do you call it? I can't remember all my classes. But what do you call it? What had happened was my attention kind of shifted. So it kind of shifted into this idea of like looking at e-government, and particularly what the governments are using this ICT for, what is it, ICT for, right? So there's all of these promises that the ICT can do, like especially the internet. And then, but in reality, when I was looking at it, like the data stated that a lot of this effort that that people do in terms of e-government kind of like goes to waste. And a lot of that was because people are not really looking at the context. They would just like copy something that works in another country and copied it to like in my case, Indonesia, in the case of Indonesia. And like, you know, that kind of thing made a lot of efforts that people do kind of like goes to waste. So you can imagine the amount of, what do you call it? Inefficiency, the amount of like money that goes kind of like to waste because of this problem. So I was really interested in looking at that education, e-government, what do you call it? And how like, you know, the government's actually basically using that for the education in Indonesia. So I was really, and then I was trying to look at what do you call it? A pilot project. I had a pilot project that was kind of interviewing my fellow, what do you call it? Scholarship recipients. I was going to see how, if this can be made into a dissertation. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm looking at, what do you call it? This particular scholarship, my scholarship, interviewing the people there and asking them of what are the challenges, because challenges are plenty when it comes down to like ICT and e-government. There's a lot of bugs. There's a lot of like, you know, bad designs. There's a lot of like things that, you know, you don't really know unless you're working on it. So there's a lot of challenges, but in reality, these challenges, people can overcome it. So I was like, okay, I want to see what are the challenges and how they're able to overcome it and how they're able to learn of the strategies to do it. So that's basically what I am currently doing right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you so much, Anis, for sharing that. Again, I will come back to that one, but before actually discussing about both of your research, another actually interesting questions that I have in mind is that why both of you decided to do this overseas. So Ghazala, what made you decided to do your postgraduate or your PhD in Malaysia? Because Ghazala, you're from Pakistan, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The reason for me to pursue my PhD in Malaysia was because of the area of research that the ECT, my institute, my previous institute, Institute of Social Informatics Technological Innovation, they were engaged in. They were the one who played a role to establish that tally center in this very remote, isolated community. And they were continuously involved, like they were working under that community informatics umbrella. So my area of research, when I selected that field, they were really like, seriously engaged, and they were playing role as a stakeholder to roll out tally center, not only in Sarawak, but in East Malaysia, but also in West Malaysia as well, because of the success. When the government of Malaysia noticed that they've been doing a really great job, so they were asked to facilitate and roll out more tally center in West Malaysia. So yes, because of the field of my field of research that I was interested in, UNIMAS was really like doing a great job. So for me to I decided if I want to pursue that PhD, so it should be in that institute. And I was lucky enough that I got admission.
Yeah, so it means that even before coming to Malaysia, you were already like working or interested in this area.
Yes, I was working at that time. I was actually working in one private company, but that was not more like working. I was working as a coordinator, at a managerial post, but was more toward coordinating with the corporate sector, private company, to organize for them training at the higher level, the executive or managerial level. So whatever training they are interested in. So I would just try to facilitate them. So that was more like I was working with them, and it was really a good learning for me to like the way they were from multidisciplinary field, working in different sectors. For me, basically, I was from my background. My master background is like MBA in finance.
Okay.
And I did work in government, semi-government, and private sector for almost 4.5 years. And I learned also that was a quite huge difference working within the pure government setup, and then the semi-government, then the private setup. So it was totally different. So then I decided that I should go for my further study, because if I want to enhance my skills, and I'm you want to develop more understanding, you want to go for further higher education. So it's supposed to be PhD, because at that time, before that, I did enroll myself for ACCA.
Yeah.
And but then later I changed my mind, because I thought that I would still have a time when I finish my PhD, then I can pursue my ACCA later, not now.
Yeah.
So it was because of my area of research that I was interested at that time. So I just followed.
Yeah. That's actually like very interesting. That is a new information like for me. How about you, Anis? Why choosing Hawaii? I mean, apart from the beautiful sceneries, etc., is there any particular reason why Hawaii?
Because I wanted to surf. No, I'm kidding. Well, that too. But the truth was, so I did my undergrad in Indonesia, right, at a top state university in Indonesia. That's what people always tell. But even top universities in Indonesia have really poor library section. So you don't really have access to like journal articles, etc., etc. And unfortunately, when I did my thesis in my undergrad, I had to go overseas and get access, online access, but overseas. Remember, at that time, there was no Sci-Hub. We didn't really have access to like LibGen, all of those things. Like now, you can have access to everything anywhere. But at that time, that was not possible. So I had to go to this particular university overseas and like go there and like, just plug my stuff and like download all of the materials that I needed. That was like back in 2006. So that was it. I was able to graduate because of that, because I can't find those information back in my top university because it's just not available. So we don't really have access to that. Now, because of that, I was like, when I was doing my what do you call it? I did my master's overseas. And then when I was doing my PhD, I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to, what do you call it? If I want to have all of this access, I may have to go overseas again, go to a university that would have all of these, what do you call it? Subscription. So that's one of the reasons. But the second reason would be my rector was also, at that time, my rector was also, what do you call it? Affiliated to a university overseas. So he was saying like, I can be your supervisor, but can you also work here in the university? I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to work at the same time I'm studying, this is going to be very difficult to do because what do you call it? There's going to be like, you know, I would not be able to have as much free time to pursue whatever passions that I want. So I know I need to be disconnected from my workplace in order for me to see, what do you call it? To see the problems from far away. And that is also helping me. So I guess like if you move around like in different countries, you get to have a sense of like, what do you call it? Oh, this is what is supposed to be. So you're not really taking things for granted, right? If you're saying like, if I've been in Indonesia for a long time, I just assume that that's just how things are. So I needed to get away, like, you know, to see another perspective, to see, no, this is how we can do better. So that's the reason why I pursue overseas. I need to have a fresh eye. I need to have a fresh, what do you call it, approach to things. And yeah, and there was that opportunity. If there wasn't that opportunity, I would have to pursue it here in Indonesia. But so I was kind of lucky that I get the chance to, what do you call it, live, the life overseas and try and experiencing how graduate students live overseas as well. So I can have a comparison with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but beforehand, Anis, did you do any ICTD related research, or you became interested because, like you're saying, you had to take some subjects related to somehow technologies and its impacts towards the society? Only then you became interested in your 3 years of coursework.
No, I mean, so I did my study in communication science here in Indonesia. And user communication science is very much, and still is, in Indonesia, it's not really connected to the ICTD. So it's very, like, you know, public relations, it's journalism, all are well. It's just like my interest was more towards technology. But because of that, most of the programs here do not really look into the technology unless you are doing computer science, unless you're doing, you know, engineering stuff. So I was trying to look for, what do you call it? Some kind of like interdisciplinary program. I couldn't really find it here. So I have to find, and I found one in University of Hawaii. So because that was interdisciplinary, I'm interested in that interdisciplinary. I know it's kind of you know, you get trained as a communication scholar for some time, but you can, like, you know, I wanted to do this thing. I was interested was because I was looking into women empowerment as well, and how the internet facilitated that, and also like I mentioned to you before about tourism, like how user generated content is being used to promote tourism here in Indonesia. How the communities, there are a lot of like travel communities here in Indonesia, and like how they use it to, what do you call it, promote places, and then, you know, generate all of this excitement towards a destination, and, like, you know, making it viral and big like that. So yeah, that's why I was interested in this stuff.
Yeah. So actually, like, both of you, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but then both of you beforehand, like Ghazala was working sort of like in the government sector, but then you were not in the technical parts of it. We're not, like, is that correct, Ghazala? You were not in the technical parts. While you're working in the corporate sector, it was more into like the managerial part. Yeah, and then after that came, I don't know, probably I'm wrong, just correct me if I'm wrong, but then when you started your PhD, from your explanations, I felt that there was a lot of technicalities involved. Is that correct?
Yes, I came from MBA background, and when I was working at the pure government setup, under the pure government setup, it was different. But when I joined semi-government, it was totally different, because at that semi-government corporation, I was working as a consultant. I was providing consultation. So my interaction was more with the human and the banking, instead of working as a accountant or things like that. It was not more about bookkeeping. But when I started to work in the private company, where my interaction was with more managerial and higher level, their aptitude, their understanding, meaning it was totally different concept. And then that moment, like during that time, I decided, even I was working, when I joined this third time, the private organization, I was writing a proposal actually, because I decided, though I enrolled myself for ACCA, but then I decided I should not stay much longer in accountancy background or field. I should just, like, enhance my education, my skills, understanding. But from the research, from the research, meaning within the research area, where I can be more like, working as an academician or working on research project. So it's more towards like, polishing your skills. So at that time I was writing a proposal, and in terms of technicality, I would say that, yes, I was not from purely research background, but somehow I got the understanding, tried to learn from other people like the Google and my friends when they were doing their research studies, like the PhD. So they also helped me to understand the, the technicalities or the challenging situation that one can get in. And it can be sometimes really difficult to go through. But then I was mentally prepared, because I knew myself that I was not like, I was more like a target-oriented person. So I knew that I cannot give up. It's okay, we'll see, like, as long as I'm committed, so there is no such thing, because, like they say, when you focus on a problem becomes bigger. But when you focus on the solution, you can easily get it solved. So my approach was a bit different than at that time. So yes, there were many technicalities, because if you're not from, like, some people, they are doing their degree studies, they do have research project. In MBA, I also had like they called it like a research report, where you work at the banking sector and you have to, like, create the whole research project and submit it for you to get your degree. But then it was totally different than what I was doing in my PhD. So yes, I was mentally ready what I was doing. Being a non-research student, it was a bit difficult, because of, you have to first, I had to develop my understanding, the approach, the clarity I had to have what I was doing and what I was about to do at that time. So when I got enrolled in PhD, the first 3-4 months was really challenging, not because I did not know what I was doing. It was a feeling I knew what I was doing, but at the same time, I don't know how I'm doing it, So the 3-4 months was really difficult to cope up with all that kind of, the mental stress, physically make yourself like, you have to sit for long reading, because, being from a MBA background, we don't do that much articles reading, And yeah, it was in like the early 3-4 months was really challenging for me to have that pure, like the working like a pure research student who is already from a research background when they were doing when they were studying their degree research projects, because I had some friends, they were from degree, and what they did study in the degree, they did carry forward, like they did like, you know, with, they did their master with on the same project, but much bigger. But whatever they did in the master, they also, some of them were working in a PhD. So for them it was easy, but they were the one talking all the time, like it's really challenging. What we did in degree was totally different. What we are doing in master is totally different. And the one who were in already in PhD, they were sharing the same thing. PhD is totally different. It's really difficult. Like, you know, it was all about mental stress, how you manage it, you know, like.
Yeah.
So for me was like the technicality. If you ask me what kind of challenges in the beginning I had, was like, you know, I knew what I was doing, but at the same time I also don't know like how I'm doing it. Like, yeah, I also knew that how I'll be doing it, but at the same time, like, you know, asking the same question again. So the early 3 months was a bit challenging, but yeah, later it, you know, it all sorted out.
Which one do you get burnt out more though? In the, what do you call it? In the industry or in the academic, do you think?
Say it again,
sorry. Now that you would get burnt out, you tend to be burnt out faster where? In the industry or in the academic sector?
I believe in the academic sector, because the reason that was
Let's go back to the industry.
That's not very encouraging, Gazala.
The reason, as I shared earlier, being a non-research student, and you know what you're doing, and you also know that how you'll be doing it. At the same time, you study so many papers one day, and at the evening you just decide, okay, how, like, you know, not to compile, but to put it in a, like, in a sense, like in a story that makes sense to the like, you know, like to the audience when you talk about your work. At the same time, to verify the research problem. It's not like a literature review. It's like you know, you did so much, and at the end you feel like, you know, I don't know how am I going to compile or to pull out all the crux, whatever I read all day. So I guess so my understanding was I was reading more instead of getting pulling out all the crux that I was supposed to be doing, because I was not from a research background. But the more important role that was played by my supervisor, he was really kind, really down to earth, really supportive, and he knew that I was from I was not from a research background, and I'm trying my level best to study, to make sense of what I was reading and what it was about actually. So he really helped me out. He didn't, meaning there might be some stage as some meeting that I might have share something really silly thing, but I read like, you know, like at the beginning, but he never said anything. He used to say, you're going quite faster, though that kind of information you will need later. You have to come down and look at the background, like, you know, to set the background, what actually we need to, like, you know, step by step. So don't rush, just take it slow. So I would just say, like, in the beginning, because I did not have the habit to have all the time article reading, journals reading, because most of the time, if you're from MBA finance background and working as a consultant, you read different kind of journal, magazines, the publication that they have. But it was fine because they have specific time. Actually, you go in the morning, come at the afternoon, there is no more research, no more work. But when it comes to PhD, you don't have any timing. Like, you know, even if you're not in the university, not in the lab, your mind is continuously busy sorting out those questions or those information that I read during the daytime. So yes, because of the early few months, they were really challenging for me. So in terms of that, I can say that yes, I had a great difficulty.
Yeah, but I guess like what helped was the fact that
go ahead.
I guess like the thing that kind of helped us is actually having supervisors or lecturers that allow us to adapt to this PhD life, because what I call it, in my case, it's like they said, like 2 years, just study for 2 years and then you can do whatever you want. In your case, it's like, you know, that person is allowing you to have that what do you call it, space, like to, okay, I'm going to digest about all of this. Don't worry, you're doing fine. This kind of encouragement, it turns out it's really important. I don't know. I'm like, as me, you've experienced this. Like, does it help
Yeah.
having a professor who is, you know, allowing you to study at your own pace somewhat?
Uh, like for me, no, like I think that would be a completely different topics because as you know, I did my PhD with two kids, like very young.
Okay.
Mine was 1.5 and 5. So that was a completely like different management. Yeah, yeah. But then so I think we can discuss about it like in some other like episode. But then one thing that is interesting, I think like both of you, I don't know about if Ghazala also experiences, but Anis, you were mentioning that in your first few years when you did the coursework, it seems to me that from what you mentioned, there are a lot of IT related subjects. And your background previously were not IT related. I don't know whether Ghazala, did it happen to you as well? Like your research is like heavy in IT, some kind of like technological aspects?
Actually, Ani's and my way of doing PhD is a bit different. She was allowed to attend classes so in which she was about to understand what topic she will be choosing from within the topic she was studying, or maybe approach or to develop understanding about the research topic or field she was supposed to be choosing at that time.
Yeah.
Mine was like, I did not, because at that time the Unimas did not provide any coursework for PhD. It was like once you got enrolled for your research for a PhD or master, you have already submitted your proposal. So it is understood that you know how to do a research work. So there was no such technical classes or coursework were provided or to help the student out, whatever they were supposed to be choosing from the research field or methodology approach, meaning that kind of way. For me was, no, I did not have any technical educational subject. All I did was like my field work is also multidisciplinary. What helped me, what I got help from my MBA to understand more in depth, like the economic side of the impact. I was able, what I'm talking, how it's supposed to be done, why people were talking like that. But since I was not from a qualitative or social sciences background, so for me, like to read people work, because I did not just study journals, I had to do to review the gray literature as well. And I was lucky enough that I had 3 supervisors, and they were really, really supportive, really understanding, and they did help me a lot in terms of wherever I feel stuck or I feel like what I have done, does it make sense? Because people are doing like that, they have taken that approach, I'm taking this approach. So like the session I had with my supervisors, most of the time they did encourage me, most of the time they did help me with if I'm going faster and they feel like if I continue with that pace, there are a few more information or aspect of that research can be easily missed out. So they would always ask me like, you will need this later, you just go back and go through this and you will find something else because you need to get those as well. So yes, there was no such like pure IT or subjects, but it was just like to do the multidisciplinary study, but from the research point of view.
Yeah, in my case, it's because I was looking into social informatics. So we were looking at how the technology from the social aspect. For example, we look at the users, like what do you call it, the context, and like we're looking at why a technology works, why is it successful, why is it being adapted, and the other side is like, why is it not being adapted? So there's a lot of like ever embroidered stuff like that. So what do you call it, even though I am from the social science, a lot of like my peers are also like from the technology. So and I love the fact that it can be an interdisciplinary thing. So like even in the program that we have a lot of like people who are studying from looking at, you know, critical race theory, for example. So there's a lot of like indigenous work as well, and, you know, related to like languages and how like the technology can be used for language processing for a certain indigenous population like that. So it's a very interdisciplinary thing. So I guess like that allows us to be a bit free when it comes down to our approaches. And yeah, we don't really get because we have classes, we don't get limited by the professors. You know, like, you know, sometimes you have professors, it's like, okay, I'm only going to be dealing with this specific subject. I'm only going to be dealing with this specific subject because it is my expertise kind of thing, right? So, but when it comes down to this, we have this like some kind of like a lot of respect between us and the professors, because they know that when we come in, we are already experts in our subject. So they're just there to, what do you call it? So it's not a very condescending kind of way. It's a very like equal field. We know that you are already an expert in that, but we are going to help facilitating you in whatever study that you want to do. We're going to help you out. We're going to give you input based on our understanding. Like some of my professors are from library sciences. Some of them are from from the computer sciences. Some of them are like from the managerial sciences. So, you know, you have a lot of, and you have about like 5 people who are minimum of 5 people, and you have 1 external. My external is from the education. So you have a lot of people from different backgrounds who are looking at your particular study, but behaving in a way that is not.
I think she's disconnected. Oh, she's coming back. You're back.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah, you were just
I'm back. So yeah.
No, you were just like talking about how
sorry about that.
sort of like a panel of not examiners, a panel of supervisors coming from different backgrounds. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, basically you have people who are from different backgrounds looking at that dissertation and giving their input on it. But yeah, that the fact that it's really difficult if you have supervisors or you have committee members who think that, okay, I'm the expert on this, and therefore what do you call it? I should teach you this kind of stuff. But in our case, we're kind of like, you know, this is the stuff that I'm doing. I'm the expert on this, and I will explain to you. Please assist me in how I should go about, but it's still a work of my own work kind of thing. So does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So no, I was just like asking that simply because, for example, for someone who is not an IT background, for example, and then you're going into a project that is IT based, it can be challenging. Like just from my experience a little bit, my PhD research was dealing a lot with sentiment analysis through Twitter.
But that's where the cooperation is me.
Sorry, say that again. Didn't catch you the first time.
I think she's gone.
Yeah. Sorry. I didn't.
No. That's where the collaboration is. So a lot of the work that I do.
Yeah.
A lot of the work that I do, you have collaboration. You collaborate with other people.
Yeah.
So you know that I'm an expert in my field.
Yeah.
But in order for me to do this particular study, I need to collaborate with other people as well. Yeah. So we all bring our expertise. I guess in a sense, that's what makes it easier, because you just cooperate with people. Yeah. It's like, I know your expertise is like in statistics, so you're in charge of that. I know your expertise is like in this methodology. You're an expert in that. So we kind of like collaborate all together and bringing in our collaboration. Yeah. I guess that's the thing that makes it less, what do you call it? You are not expected to know everything. That's why you have collaborations. And I I love that about like working with other people, because
Yeah.
they are experts, and you don't have to be an expert in that, because your friends are already
Yeah.
experts in
Yeah,
that.
but
So you're free
oh,
to,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah. So because like what I'm saying is that probably of course it depends on the structure of your projects, right? Some people like Ghazala is working in a big team, right? And then each member of the team is actually doing one part of that big projects. And then probably like in Ani's side, you have your own project, but then you have sort of like a panel of supervisors bringing in different one. But then there might be someone like me as well, who is the structure of the PhD is doing everything individually. So it's not like projects, then there might be some challenges in IT if you are not familiar with that one, which you have to learn. But then, so now I want to go back to Ghazala actually, because you're mentioning about, like
Melissa, I have a question.
Yes. Go ahead, Ghazala.
Could you please share your own experience, meaning how did you manage from your PhD? Because you're also quite familiar with the social informatics side. You're working on the women empowerment. So that is also like a sociology. So meaning how did you how did you find your way out particularly? Because sometimes it can be really challenging, especially like, people, they have a research background. Based on that, they continue to do their master and PhD.
Yeah.
So you did your graduation in the same way, or you chose totally different field?
Is it like me? You're asking me, Ghazala, or you're asking Anis?
I'm asking you. Anis comes from a multidisciplinary background.
No.
She has
It's me.
You're asking
she has
me.
this.
Okay.
I really like her. I'm asking you, how did you what was your experience as a postgrad student with PhD? Because so far I know from your presentation, from your research work, you're doing work in the women empowerment area, which is a kind of another social sciences field.
Yeah.
So how come you cope up with those challenging situations?
Like, why? Because again, I think like in the forum several weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago, I talk about how actually I'm always interested in the anthropology and the sociology aspect of technology. So I'm not a tech person. If you're asking me, like what I was saying, when I was doing my PhD, I had to learn about R coding, which was very hard and challenging until the present time. So that is actually my focus. And then I find it like it can be applied to like different topics related to ICT4D. My PhD wasn't really into the women empowerment. Women empowerment is a project that I had previously, right? And then which I'm continuing after I completed my PhD. And but nonetheless, in both projects, both in the PhD projects and the previous projects, we were heavy on doing field work and basically meeting the person, meeting people, and then getting to know about how they were using technologies. In the women empowerment one, I was doing it with groups of different women entrepreneurs who own micro businesses in different areas of Indonesia. So it was really exciting, just sitting down with them, trying to see it from their own perspective. And then I think I've said it already, being around them, you realize that they know a lot more in that context in comparisons to you. So, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy that kind of experience, trying to see the experience from their perspective. But then when I was doing my PhD, it was actually doing similar thing, seeing how social media is being used by politicians, which is completely different. As you know, is very structured, is very, I mean, of course, like the women have how to say, their own ways as well in doing things. But I think it was much more exciting and honest, and they were not afraid to try new things. But then with politicians, it was really careful considerations. So, and it's really interesting as well to see how one medium, in this case in social media, is used very differently by two different groups. So that's how that is basically how I'm trying to do it, is trying to emerging myself with the communities and trying to see and take a notes on how they're doing it, some things like that. Yeah.
So you were from the anthropological background. You had
like my background is communications, but then my PhD is more in the sociology and cultural studies background. Yeah.
So that's why, okay, so the project you're doing now, particularly the women empowerment. So okay,
yeah,
fine.
Yeah, and then again, probably like I find some similarities with what you're doing, because trying to see it from how it's evolving, like how they're using it, how they are finding new ways of using it. I mean, it's it's very exciting seeing it from them. Yeah. But then another thing that I find interesting with both of you is that Ghazala, for instance, you are working with indigenous Malaysians. So assuming that they speak with the local language, which you're not really familiar about, right? So how did you deal with that? I mean, do you find it more as a challenge, or you find it more as something exciting?
The community I chose for my research study called Barrio, and they are Kalabit. Actually, they speak Kalabit language, not BM, not Bahasa Melayu language. So they have their own ethnic language, and they are mostly educated people, quite well versed in English language as well.
Yeah.
But when it comes to conduct a research study for a non-native speaker like me, and to validate my data, I had to have someone from the community as a translator. Otherwise, they are good at communication, but when it comes to academic questions, sometimes it's really hard for them to understand.
Yeah.
Meaning they do understand, but for me to avoid myself from the trouble, particularly when it comes to Viva session, they can just point a question at you like, how did you verify? And how did you, meaning what makes you so sure that whatever data you collected, your non-native speaker, you are sure they answer you well. So anyhow, I had to have someone from the community, but the study I conducted, it went in different stages. Like I had to go down to spend a week, like to understand, to have a small talk, to get their point of view about the Tally Center, their understanding. Yeah. So I should know like how I can be, meaning how should I be approaching them? If I ask about particular question, do they understand me? And meaning up to spending one week, like, no, I had this interactive interaction with the community, try to notice like, their attitude toward Tally Center, their attitude toward the development that came after Tally Center. And in this current situation, how do they look at the Tally Center? Do they really want it to be continued, or they want something else? So it was something like that. After that, I went for a pilot study. So again, I had to interview them properly. For that, I had someone local who helped me with the translation. But for the main data, when I went for collection, I had to hire someone from the Kalabit community.
Yeah.
So being a non-native speaker, sometimes it's really hard because you have to wait for the translator to be with you, especially you find someone for interview, but there is this language barrier.
Yeah.
So you cannot do it. Sometimes you have you have people and they are helping you to conduct to translate the question, that session can be quite long. But there are many times that I encountered many people, they were ready to give me an interview, or they were ready for this focus group discussion. At that time, I was quite far from this translator house, so I couldn't get anyone's help, I really wanted to have that. But somehow, because my methodology was storytelling approach, the most significant change, And the sampling technique for that was like a purposive sampling technique. You have to find some information that is like, information rich cases based on like for the in-depth study. So for me was like, you interview anyone, have you used the telecenter, and you can have nice discussion and pull out information. But how would you know that he or she is the non-users? So identify people, go after them, impress them. Sometimes, yeah, being a non-native speaker, I found it a bit difficult, really difficult, especially most of the time I found people and I did not have translator with me. I lost the opportunity. But then again, I had to spend more days there, try to make sure the data I collected was validated at the same time. And I was doing like, triangulation. And at the same time, the community was really supportive, I should say that.
Yeah.
So challenges were there, but because of, the support I got from the community in terms of when I was interviewing them, the session was more than 1 hour, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, because it's a huge information. When they were sharing their experiences, I didn't just, I didn't just say that. I did not cut them off like from the talk that they were discussing the experiences. I had to wait for them. The moment they are like, talking about something else, I had to pinpoint, how about that one? They're talking about this. So the session was quite long. And when I'm talking about, because I thought they may like, go like, we don't have enough time, because it was the paddy planting session. So they were quite good. They would give me time at the night time, evening time, after dinner time, sometime in the morning, sometime at the lunchtime, and they were taking break from the paddy plantation. So in terms of that, community really cooperated with me, but it can be really challenging for a non-native speaker if they cannot speak the language.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that I get an impression that the groups or the big projects that that you are being part of, they've been working with this community for some time. Is that correct?
My university was the one who built that with the help of IDRC and the Malaysian government. They established the telecenter there, but I was there I was not representing my university. I was representing myself as a independent researcher.
Yes.
Otherwise, the information can be manipulated, can be biased, and there would be another question. Oh, you're talking about all positive thing about your telecenter. It's because your university was so involved in that community. So for me, like they asked me a question: are you from this university? I have to give them a clear answer. I'm working as a independent researcher for my study. There is no such thing, because my approach was holistic. I was not only studying on the intangible from the non-user point of view, I was also doing study on the direct user from the direct impact point of view, because I have to have this comparative analysis. So that's why my discussion used to be quite long. And in order for me to save myself from that trouble when one can easily point out at you that because you are from this university, so the data can be biased, and they cannot talk negative because they feel like, oh, she made reports back to the university, So they clearly asked, and they were really smooth in talking, because most of the stories that I published in my thesis, there is this good part that they highlighted so well, and there is some the negative point they talk about, and whatever they wanted to say, they were quite good at it. They didn't hide.
Yeah, but just because I had an impression that you had a good relationship in terms of trust in between you and them. So I think that is good. Now, like, on the other hand, this is quite interesting. Anis is actually doing the opposite. You're Indonesians doing studies about Indonesia, but you need somehow to collaborate or to explain this context that is taken for granted probably for you, but then for your supervisors is something completely different. So how did you deal with that, Anis?
Well, as I mentioned to you before, when I first started, my intention was to look at user-generated content in tourism industry. So I thought it would make sense if I go to Hawaii, because there's a lot of like, user generated content that are being produced in here. And I know that it's going to be a big thing. But as I progress, the material kind of like, what do you call it? The subject that I'm studying kind of like differ. But on the other hand, it still works well because what do you call that? The people who I'm interviewing, my respondents, the group of population that I'm looking at are PhD students, Indonesian PhD students who studied overseas. So as you can imagine, I mean, like, we all three of us studied in different countries. The challenges are different. So what do you call it? So it works well for me because like, okay, I can see it from the perspective of the United States and the system in the United States and the challenges that it presented to the graduate students or PhD students in the United States. But when I'm interviewing people who are like in Europe, for example, they have completely different like challenges and, different context altogether. So, or like, interviewing people from Malaysia, because I have respondents who are coming from Malaysia as well. So in a sense, it's like, regardless of where I am, I guess the fact that I just have to be, regardless of where I am, the challenges I would need to be able to be, at least have a little understanding of being a graduate student overseas.
Yeah.
So it kind of like works well with me. I mean, you see the retention rate here in the United States. The retention rate for PhD students, especially those that are already in ABD, which is like after defending their proposal, which would be after the 3rd year, is kind of low. So a lot of people decided to, okay, it's not, what do you call it? It's not really worth it for me. So a lot of people kind of left as well. So there's a lot of like challenges here as a graduate student in the United States. And like for me to be immersed in that community. And I live in an international graduate student dorm and learning about all their challenges. Because they all from the same university, but all different departments. So there's like language department, there's like what do you call it, education department, engineering department, like oceanography department, what do you call it, plants, the CTAR department. There's plenty, and there are a lot of challenges that I had no idea about until I kind of like live immersed in that graduate students from all departments, what do you call it, community. And then I get to understand, okay, so your program is like this, so these are your challenges, and you get to learn, and that kind of like enrich my experience in terms of, what do you call it, interviewing my respondents later on. Because like, okay, I can understand, I don't really have a full grasp of the situation, because remember, I can only talk about my own experience. But you get to see, okay, so these are the challenges that people who are like from animal husbandry are experiencing, for example. And like I can use that experience that I get from my international dorm and implement it and use it, hopefully to make better questions for my respondents, like that.
Yeah, so it seems like both of you, despite of the challenges, seems to kind of like enjoy and get a lot of good experiences from this PhD in a foreign land. So I would like to know, so what do you plan for the future? I know like currently Ghazala is doing her postdoctoral fellowship, right? Also in Malaysia. And so how long is it going to take, Ghazala, the postdoctoral fellowship?
2 years.
2 years. And then so what do you plan after that? Because you came from sort of like like you're saying, consultancy side. Now you're in the academic field, and then now you're doing a postdoctoral fellowship. So what do you plan for the futures after that?
I I was meaning I've been thinking that I will stay put in the academia for a while. Where we'll be trying to work, meaning I will be trying to working with even my UNIMAS previous university if there is any development projects coming, or maybe in future with the UCTS. So yeah, I have planned that I have planned that I'll be staying in the academia for a while actually. And later I can decide if I want to move out to another country or not. But for now, since my case study was all about the indigenous community, and the institute I'm currently with, they are also working on the indigenous community, meaning Malaysian indigenous community. So it would be a really good chance for me to learn more about other indigenous community, and to amplify skills, to improve the understanding. So in future, whatever case study I take or project I take, it would be much more easier for me in terms of cultural understanding, in terms of the community attitude toward development projects. So it's going to be a really great deal for me staying with the UCTS, working on with those communities. But I have two questions for Anis. One question is, Anis, when you are doing study at Hawaii, your case interviewing local Indonesian international students, or they were different? They were from different countries.
So we have this scholarship program by the department,
Indonesian government, right?
Indonesian government, yes. So we have this scholarship program that sends lecturers from Indonesia, whether you're from what they call a private university or from state university. They would fully fund you. Well, fully is kind of like subjective, but they would fund you to go overseas and study and get your PhD, because that's part of what I call it, the target in the the government target to have PhD graduates that would study overseas and then come back and try to develop the country or like that. So I was interviewing, again, I did not intend to study this particular group, right? But when I was being immersed in that international education, one of my studies that I did was I interviewed people from all over the world who comes to study in Hawaii, and trying to understand how they're able to continue studying, but at the same time be connected with their family back home. So that kind of expanded from there. And then I was kind of like, okay, why don't I study people who I would represent? Because I would love to be able, again, I wanted to be able, because my government was the one who was paying me to go overseas and study. Let me do some work for them. I mean, I will study something that will be kind of useful for them in the hope that it can help them kind of design perhaps a better scholarship system, a better e-government program like that. So that's what I wanted to do. And going back to Esme's question before, it's what do I want to do? I have this plan, returning home, of what I want to do. But then the pandemic strikes. And then, you just realize that your position, your work is no longer there. So this becomes another issue. So now I am, trying to complete it, trying to focus on the dissertation, finishing that. But at the same time, strangely enough, you know how we're studying about women empowerment all the time, right? How the internet is able to do women empowerment. I am now also doing that as well. So learning how, from my respondents, learning so this is how they do it. Okay, let me try that. I don't know about you, Gazawa, but every time a graduate students come from overseas, they all want to say let's have a cafe. I'm a pretty good cook. So when I go home, forget about all of this academic stuff. I'm going to have a cafe. I'm going to open up a business. Are you experiencing that, Gazala?
I have few friends. We have a future plan that we would run.
There you go. So I am I am currently doing that as well. It's like, okay, there's all of these challenges. I don't really have a, what do you call it, a job that's waiting for me anymore. So it's just like a part-time job. So I'm thinking, okay, let's pursue this. Let's pursue this. Let's be the empowered women who is using the internet to be able to, I don't know, financially contribute like that.
So there is one more question I have. When you were interacting with those international students, and particularly you are more into like what kind of, you know, like the challenges that they were going through, difficulties they were going through, because it's more to understand the psychological perspective that they have being an international student far from home. And at the same time, PhD is not, I won't say difficult, but it's somehow quite long and lonely journey. That's what makes it difficult.
Very.
Because if it's about studying harder, anyone can do harder study, meaning on routine basis, you are studying, you're having like 7 to 8 or 10 literature, 10 article review. You can add few more hours, you can like, you know, increase the number and try to make it quick. But because of 3 days, you can have a really energetic and productive. And the next fourth one day would be more like low energy wise. It's more like, you know, you're still working, but you cannot make it productive as you had the previous 3 days. Being an international, so maybe one of the factors because you are far from home. Second is you're so seculated to this one, you know, computer. Human interaction is quite less, but more like computer interaction we have. So maybe the social family touch is missing. That's one of the reason I believe that one can easily get like feeling a bit low or down.
Very much.
So what were the more common challenges that you found there, the international student were facing? Either they were from South Asia or Southeast Asia or overall Asian.
So the study that I did earlier that looked into like international students in my international dorm was the fact that I mean what was quite interesting. Okay, so I have to explain to you that I was also, my mother did her master's and PhD overseas, and I had to come with her as well. At that time, there was no technology. So the only way for us to communicate with our family was like either phone call, but at the same time, at that time, there was no phones, you know, they don't really have like, you know, they don't have like that high technology. As me, definitely would have a phone. If you're in Jakarta, you would have phones, right? But we can't do that. So we would like be sending like tape. It's like kind of like sending mixtape, but it has your recording, and like then your grandma would listen to you. So that was quite difficult back then. Nowadays, like how the technology has gone so far, I have one of my respondents who is she is from Southeast Asia. So you know how in Southeast Asia we have helpers, right? We have, some people have helpers, some people have like drivers, this and that. She was actually like running her household while she was in Hawaii. So she knows like, okay, pick my daughter up, like do this, cook this and that. It's like, it's very seamless. The only downside is because the time difference. But other than the time difference, like, so she doesn't really have a good, what do you call it, sleeping hours, because she follows that. But she was able to do all that. You have WhatsApp, well, actually, you have Fiber, you have WhatsApp, you have like FaceTime, you have all of these things. You are definitely well connected. You're just far away, but you're still using those technologies. So this is really quite, or at the same time, you know, phone calls at that time, back then, was expensive. You can't really call more than an hour. It's just too expensive.
True.
But nowadays, you would have one of my respondents has a toddler, 2 or 3 years old. Every time she eats, the toddler has to see her mother. So she would have like, you know, her phone all the time on, and they would be on Skype like 24/7. So like the daughter would be able to see her all the time. Whatever she's doing is just there. And it's 24/7, and it doesn't really cost anything, right? So it's just like you're using your Wi-Fi. So it's great you have all of this technology that can like allow you to take further studies and have you, it's like, not really disconnected from your family. Because yes, you are physically far away, but you're communicating all the time. You're seeing them all the time. It's like, hey, mommy is like in a at the beach. Look at this view, blah 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 blah, like that. So I don't know. Do you experience that, Ghazala? It's so different than how I was like when I was growing up. We didn't have that. That at that time, it's difficult. No communication. You have to bring your family. Nowadays, you can go home every 6 months. You just, you can go home every 6 months because like the flight is so much cheaper. But on daily space, you can just like use your mobile phone for anything. Like you're in the library. Hey, mommy is in the library, blah, blah, blah. Check this out. Let's see uncle, let's see aunties, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, that I find that really interesting, despite of the fact that there might be some things that I disagree, because, for example, the pandemic shows that no matter how often you do this, it doesn't, how to say, replace face-to-face interactions. Yeah, but yeah, like, thank you so much, ladies, like, for sharing everything that you share with us today. I'm sure that the audiences learns a lot. But I don't know what I can say. My impressions is that I feel that both Ghazala and Anis, at least in both of your cases, doing a PhD in a foreign land or doing an ICT4D research in a foreign land brings, how to say, much more richness rather than challenges. Even the challenges are part of the richness that you experience as well. So I find that really encouraging and really interesting. And we will explore more topics related to different aspects of women in the area of ICT4D in our episodes, like our future episodes of Tea Time with IPID-Asia Women Forum. So thank you everyone for being here and sharing your stories. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And yeah, I'll see you guys on behalf of IPID-Asia Women Forum. I'll see you guys soon in the future. Thank you everyone. Bye-bye.